Well, welcome back to Building a Legacy. This is our fifth podcast, and today we have Matt Musser with us. He's the general manager of our landscaping division, and of course, Johnny Inch is here, our owner. So, Matt, how long have you been with the company?
This is 10 years now. I started in 2013.
It's a long time.
Has been a while.
We'll get more into your history here and what you've done, but just kind of reflecting back, if you've listened to the previous four podcasts, we talked a lot about how the company started. We talked to John Sr. Last month about that, so we're just going to continue to build on the landscaping aspect, which has been key to the success of Inch & Co. as a whole and really foundational to who we are as a business in total. So, Matt, when you first started, what were you doing? What was it like, and what's it like today?
It's very different. I started my first year as actually a laborer on a landscape crew. It was just during college. It was during the summer. So that obviously progressed. It's much different now. I'm the general manager, so I've done, I think, about every job between there, from landscape foreman, hardscape foreman, production manager, general manager. So I've kind of been all over the place, done basically whatever's needed done just to get the jobs done. So.
Yeah, so that's a great story of just progressing throughout your career and the opportunities at Inch & Co.
I think I actually picked up Matt at the church.
Church picnic.
Yes.
Yep.
So I figured him out at church picnic, and I knew he was going to Delaware Valley for horticulture. So I was like, you know what? He's tall. He kind of looked Amish, so I thought he could be Amish. Everybody thinks he's Amish. That meets Matt.
Not quite enough kids yet, though.
No, he's working on it. He's getting close. Matt picked up at church, and ever since that point, it's just been a great relationships. And Matt's someone that you can trust. And we always talk about loyalty and building a workforce around him. And he's been able to expand that even more than we could have. And just looking back through recently, where I sent the job offer we gave you back in like 2018 or something around there, 2019.
I think it was just part of a review you did, actually.
Yes, it was an employee review.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I said you've exceeded your salary by $40,000 when we thought you would be at today.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty good. Yeah, and that's all to you.
You put a timeline together with progressions.
Yes.
And
and that's how we got people at the beginning of the landscape company. Jeff and I, Jeff's a lot better salesman than I am, and a lot better at marketing, but we promise people, a 3-year outlook, and you give them that road. And I think anybody who's worked with us over the last 10 to 12, 13 years has seen that we've always come through on that, if not by a lot more than we thought. So,
yeah, definitely, for sure.
Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit and go back to you, Johnny. We talked to your dad last time about how this whole thing got started, but taking that a step further, when you broke away from your dad and started your own company, how was it different compared to, I think it was John's landscaping, then Inch's landscaping, and then when you bought it, what did you call it, and then what did you guys do differently to grow the business?
Well, I always told my dad when I was younger that it should be our last name because it's so unique. Nobody can mimic Inch. When you say Inch, they have no clue it's his last name. They're like, Finch, Lynch, Cinch, there's nothing like Inch. So I told my dad that.
I always get Mitch's landscaping. Oh, you're with Mitch's? No, Inch's.
So from the beginning, we always wanted it to be our last name, and we've always idolized some of the local successful people like Kinsley, the Stewarts, Wagmans. They've always used their last name, and it's something that if you put your last name out there, you should be reputable and stand behind it. So that's something that we've always aspired to do, live up to our last name. And it was a transition from my dad to Inch's landscaping. I know most people have heard me speak and talk about it. It wasn't an easy transition. For 2 or 3 years, I never talked to mom and dad. We didn't go to any holidays together, nothing together. And it was kind of like a movie reel when my dad was over at Huber's Nursery over in Lancaster County. And at that point, I hadn't talked to my dad for 2 years, and I just randomly crossed him there. And it was in the pouring down rain. He was soaked wet. And, I saw him loading up plants himself. At that point, Jeff and I, were off doing something else. And it was kind of him with a couple guys. And it really got to me. And after that, I went home and I wrote my dad a letter and my mom telling them that, if they would just hand the keys off to us, that we'd be able to, let them retire and take what they've built and then, build it even more. And we did from that point forward. But the first days of Inches Landscaping was very difficult. Not knowing how business works in general. I mean, I have I would call it a ninth grade math degree. Where my mom, had got me set up with Amish math. So I got Amish math ninth grade, and then after that, it was kind of like business math. But all of that was relevant to the business world. Everything I learned was not a waste. And the biggest thing the issue we had the first year, we didn't realize that what workers' comp was. We never knew that workers' comp was an insurance you had to pay. So at the end of the year, we had a workers' comp audit, and Jeff and I were like, I don't know. Jeff's like, we got a bill. I'm like, I don't want to get a bill. We're like, yeah, with all the payroll, it's a $38,000 workers' comp bill. Jeff's like, $38,000? I didn't know we had to pay that. So we sat there looking at each other, looking at that, thinking about, can we take installment payments? Can we do this or that? And it took learning from those little mistakes to get us kind of, I call it like a 10-year college degree. Neither Jeff or I went to college, so we took 10 years just learning business and how business works, understanding what a balance sheet is, what profit and loss is, what a pro forma is, and looking at projections and outlooks. Stuff that we never learned, riding on a mower or building a retaining wall or framing up something.
Yeah. So you can't really talk about landscaping without talking about the H-2B program. So I think I'd like to hear, from your perspective on that and what that has done for the company and how you really got started in that. Well, if you want to touch on that.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that because when we were young, Matt heard me tell this story before a couple of times. My dad, we literally, drove down the road. All three of us were in the front seat of the truck with my dad, my two brothers and I. And he would scream that we'll never have anybody but Americans in this truck. There'll never be anybody. We'll never have, foreign labor. And, he was adamant about that. And then, about 2 years later, when I turned 18, I was running crews before I could drive, and I had, 12, 13 guys on my crews. And like every Friday, it was religious. They called off, they left early, they disappear. And it's like I was so frustrated that we could not have consistent work. And our workforce was like fragmented even back then. So I'd have to work till 9, 10 o'clock at night, making up because I lost all my guys that Friday. And it just came over and over again. And once I built a family and had kids, it was like, I can't take every Friday night or every Thursday night when people call off and work till dark. So I got a hold of an immigration attorney down in Texas, Amigos Labor Solutions, called them up out of a magazine, 18 years old, no clue. And I said, I want H-2B workers. Didn't even know what H-2B meant or stood for, but I knew that some other companies were using those guys. So I called them up. They sent me with the process, advertised in the newspaper. Long story short, had interviews with them. At 18 years old, I would schedule my interviews at round the clock at 5:30 in the morning, and I'd go 5:30 to like 8:30. And through the process, you have to offer the jobs to Americans first. So I got to interview the Americans, offer them the job. They don't accept the job or they don't respond. I got to send them a certified mail saying, I really want you to work. Please accept yes or no. And that is really, really misunderstood in the market because when we started using the H-2B process in America, everybody in the world was saying, they're using illegal immigrants, they're using illegal immigrants, they're paying those guys $5 an hour, and that's how they're doing all this work. In reality, I was paying them probably double what they were paying their guys because it's stipulated by the government what I pay those guys. So we started doing things the right way even back then when I was 18 years old with my dad's company. And that translated into today. And without those guys, and their consistent workforce, it would have been really, really hard to scale to where we're at today. And Matt knows, Matt's been with us 10 years now, so Matt sees the issues in labor and not having consistent labor. It just makes your life a living chaos.
It does, yeah. The H-2B program, it's a great program. It's kind of a love-hate relationship, though, because it is run through the federal government. So, when everything works great, it works great. We get our guys, the same guys that have been coming up here 10 years. They come, they show up, they're ready to work, they want to work. But then I believe it was 2 years ago, we didn't get the guys till October, 2 or 3 years ago. Well, landscape season, is kind of winding down come October. It's not when you need them, but that's when we got them that year. It was just delayed that long. So we make the best of it. We love the guys that come up. They're great guys, great workers. So thankful they're here. But yeah, it's definitely a good program to look into for anyone out there who's working landscaping on any large scale.
Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about something that I know we've talked about is you see a lot of these guys that have a truck, a trailer, and a mower, rolling down the road. So what advice would you give them to start their own business or to grow their business, or even how do they become a sub for Inch & Co? What does that whole thing look like? How does somebody like that grow?
I mean, Johnny starting a landscape company, maybe he'll answer that a little bit better than I can in some ways, but I mean, I just came on with them and kind of helped run with what they had started. But I'd say definitely, like, for the smaller guys, know your numbers, know what you're doing. We see so many guys, we've seen a lot of new guys just in the last couple weeks, new trucks, new trailers, new mowers. And you also see a lot of those guys in, 1 or 2 years, they're gone. So, come in, you're working hard. Make sure you're making money working hard. Don't come in and just undercut everyone just to get work and then, lose your business in 2 years. Do good work. If you can get in with a larger company like Inch & Co., we use subs for some of our work. Definitely those are good relationships to have, build those relationships. I don't know if you have anything else on that, Johnny?
Well, I tell everyone who aspires to have a landscape company or any company in general, not just a landscape company, if you think you're going to make more money owning your landscape company, specifically landscaping, because it's a very low margin compared to all the amount of capital you have to put out in equipment, trucks, trailers, mowers, skid loaders, excavators, just small equipment even, enclosed trailers, flatbed trailers, the DOT process, and making sure that you're legitimate in all those areas, strapping down the risk of hauling heavy equipment, hauling mowers on trailers. If you think that you're going to make a lot of money going into it, 100% of the time, probably going to fail. If you're going into it like my dad went into it, he truly loved landscape work. He still loves landscape work. It's what he still does. Truly loved getting your hands dirty. 6 o'clock at night, being soaked with sweat, where you can wring out your underwear with water and actually enjoy that.
He's actually said that.
He says it all the time. I was so sweaty, I could wring my underwear out. But he always loved that. Like, he embraced that. And he put that in us. That's why we love to work so much. It's like he put that in us. If you don't truly, truly love hard, physical, hot labor, that's when all your season is in the hot sun, it won't work. It won't work because you have to give up so much of your life and so much of your time to build 10, 12 years of a business. At any point in time could go away after that 10 to 12 years, or you have a drought, or you have a lot of rain and you can't even get on job sites. It's so, affected by rain, snow, wind. It's very, volatile. And that's why you look around the country, and I try to explain to the young entrepreneurs, you'd never see private equity companies where all the money is generally in the world, the highest wealthy people in the world are private equity. You never see them buying landscape companies or buying excavation companies. And it's because weather affects those businesses so much year to year that they can't build out a stable cash flow chart. If they want to build out a stable cash flow projection over 3 years, it's almost impossible. And Matt knows this as well. The weather has such a gigantic effect on us, and it's very tough business. You got to be gritty. You got to grow up in it. I don't know how many people in the last, I'd say 15 years that my dad's brought on, that we brought on, school teacher. Don't want to be inside anymore, wants to be out in the sun, wants to, do landscaping. Comes on for 6 months, leaves. Farmers, that I worked for us when we started, got to get out of the farming, want to come work with us. Could not do it. You give somebody a wheelbarrow and tell them to push it up a hill with mulch or stone, or soil for 6 or 8 hours straight, and their legs are burning so much, the last wheelbarrow, they can barely get it out, and they got to jump up back on the truck, load up all their tools, tie it down, strap it down, and then get back to the shop. It's such a heavy amount of work. Like, you got to be a certain kind of breed to do it. Matt, I think, can speak to that as well.
Yeah. No, if you're going in thinking you're going to work 40 hours, you've got something coming.
And it's
big surprise coming. Something
that I learned a long time ago. When I was real young, someone told me, and this hits home with us. It hit home with me when we were actually in that position. They said, follow the guy who owns the landscape company back to his house, and you'll typically have a truck that's worth more than his house. And when I heard that, I was like, I didn't even know that back then. I was 16 years old. And the more that I see it now, it's like a lot of times all of their net worth or whatever they have tied up is in equipment, and it's in a truck and it's in a trailer, and they never actually make any money. And that's one of the reasons, that we pivoted to real estate, is it for that long-term residual, asset that you can take and, make multiples on if you keep it long enough.
I want to pivot into just some tips for the average homeowner, if you can help us out with that, Matt. So, in general, I think everyone thinks they're a landscaper at their house, the weekend warriors. I know I'm one of them.
Oh, yeah.
But so if you're mulching, do you remove the old mulch? How high do you pile it? How high or low should you cut your grass? When should you plant? Can you help us out with some general tips?
I would say don't do any of it. Just call us.
Good
I mean,
answer.
That's my advice. But anyway, yeah, mulching and stuff. I mean, it all depends on, as far as you said about removing mulch. Depends how high your mulch is. You don't want it to build up over time. 1.5 to 2 inches. If you're mulching every year, is a good amount to put on. 3 inches on a new bed or a bed that hasn't been mulched in a couple years. What else did you say? Mowing grass length. Johnny, that's all you.
That's all Jeff talks
Jeff's
about.
not here
Yeah.
to talk about
Yeah.
this. Here, I'll do Jeff. Johnny's the best mower we've ever
I
had.
think that's the one thing I haven't done here is I've never really operated a mower.
Really?
That's
No.
crazy.
You have like 30 of them down there.
Never been on a mowing crew.
All right.
Yep.
That's like the one thing.
But and Matt has, with people that have talked about our business recently and in the past that have talked about us and where we grew from, Matt has hands-on experience from a couple trucks to Matt being with us, where Jeff and I did pretty much everything from sales to estimation, to project management, everything in between, and seen the evolution from there to now. And then at that point, Matt's grown so much from then till now. And, Matt has that kind of hard work personality growing up on a chicken farm, having to do chickens. And a couple times I was out there with you on your chicken farm.
Yeah, you came a couple times.
And having that
Lots of
hard
good
work
fun out there.
smells great.
Yeah.
It's very, very tough to find people like Matt that come from that background, that like to work and that went to work. And Matt started off as a laborer. A year later, you were foreman. 2 years later, foreman.
Yep.
From foreman, maybe about a year, I don't know if it was a full year, you went right to scheduling. So we had a
Yep.
Google Doc spreadsheet. and then
Scheduling, all the ordering.
all the ordering, all the materials, all the plants, mulch, everything. You were in that, and then graduated to GM, where basically you running the whole landscape operations, which, in general, this year we'll be about a $7.2, $7.5 million landscape company. In the scheme of Pennsylvania, we're in the top 10 because typically landscape companies, 95% of landscape companies do under $1 million a year. So we're in the top 10% of the United States in volume. Even though it's not a huge business, it's a big, big business in the landscape world, and it's a lot on Matt to do that. I think those 3 or 4 years of infancy where he was learning set him up, for success, and he's flourished. I mean, you can put anything on Matt. I think that also comes from being with us in the grind when we were just pulling by the seat of our pants, bringing guys in, running guys in. I mean, at one point we were running 3 crews with 1 truck.
Yeah, I remember riding in the middle of that old shop truck you had, your very first truck.
Yeah.
I think I was in the middle. You were driving one time. I mean, my long legs and in the middle of that truck, and yeah, it was a grind for sure.
They could hear my truck coming through the condominiums. Seriously.
It's true.
They had
I knew it was time to mow.
It had a nice tick to it.
It had a tick to it, and it had a wheel bearing that was squeaky. I don't know if it was the wheel bearing or it was the bed, but paid $4,000 for it cash, and I drove that for like 5 years. Single bed, single cab, little box truck.
That was my first company truck then. I put a piece of 3/4 inch plywood in the bed so I wouldn't fall through the bed. It was a good truck.
Yep, Matt took I passed the torch to Matt.
Yep.
But that's the cool thing about Matt. I mean, you're managing a team of 40 to 60 people, depending on the time of year. Yet you're still out here at 4 in the morning moving plants around, and you're still leaving at 7, 8 o'clock at night. So you have that heart in you.
I do, yeah. I was try not to leave that late anymore. My wife doesn't like that too much when I leave that late. But yeah, the early mornings, like the last 2 days I was in here both at 6 o'clock, both mornings, unloading plants with Daryl, just getting down and getting stuff done. So
Yeah. And you certainly drive a culture of just hard work and teamwork. So I think that makes a big impression on your team that they see you out there working just like them, which is very important. So just a couple other things I want to talk about. How, Johnny, in your mind, how does landscaping complement the rest of your businesses that you have here at Inch & Co? And we have the full cycle. So we develop, entitle, build, do the site work. We have real estate, landscaping. Like we can pretty much handle the entire process if somebody wants to buy a piece of property and build it and sell it or rent it out. But so how do you see landscaping impacting the rest of the businesses?
The landscape company, tied along with the construction company, has been like, it's like the core. The landscape company is where we made a lot of our connections. And one thing that we overlook a lot when we talk about the landscape company is how many people we touched over the last 20 years, going back with my dad's company. And that they were our customers, saw us when we were 10, 11, 12 years old, and how that's benefited us as we've grown in our relationships. And people that have seen the landscape company know that, and seen us grow. The landscape company will always be kind of at the core of what we do. It's probably the most gratifying business we have. Almost every other business outside of construction and landscaping, are basically relationship driven, but they're basically a task. You complete the task. You don't really step back like you do in landscaping and see a huge change in environment. When you see a project, and Matt knows this, and we would share pictures, we would joke around about it, just different projects that when it was started to when it was done, just how magnificent, it turned out and the way it looked and the pictures. And it's a real good, feel-good feeling in the landscape world when you can step back and see what you've changed. And I think Matt does this as well as I do. It really, when I drive down the road and I know all the different projects, that we went by, and when we're driving, and Allie and I'm just talking her ear off on, well, I did this, well, I built that retaining wall, well, I did this in this game, well, I did that whole house. We laid 36 skids of sod down there in one day. We have all the different things that we've done over the last 20 years. And there's a sense of pride that we have in the landscape company because it's a prideful thing to be able to step back and see something you created and be proud of it. For Matt, he sees that every day, and it's something that I miss in my heart because I love that. And that's why Jeff makes fun of me liking to mow or like mowing a lot growing up. But there's something that everybody can connect with in mowing. When you get done mowing, whether it's 20 minutes or 2 hours, it feels good, it looks good. The next week you gotta do it again. But when you initially get that done, there's a sense of satisfaction like deep in your soul that I finished that and it looks good and I'm complete and you can move on. And in our businesses now, I really don't have that feeling any day that I completed anything, a lot of things are happening, but like you never get that satisfaction. Completing, finished, move to something new. It feels good, in the landscape business. I still, smile when I go by and see the guys out there and see how beautiful the projects look.
I remember you, Jeff, or you, Brandon, and Brennan arguing about stripes not being straight quite a bit.
All we talk about is straight stripes and the quality of the grass, and it's funny, but it's crazy how people that I connect with now that, are doing a lot of large things, connection is mowing. Like they're all connected by mowing. When I use a mowing, story or a conversation, they're like, they draw right into it because everybody mows, everybody knows about mowing their lawn. So for me, it's, I don't know what you want to call it. It's very sentimental to me. And Jeff likes to make fun of me, but it's good. It's all good.
It does. One more question for you, Johnny, I want to talk about is, so obviously landscaping was your baby, and you handed that off at some point. You had to realize I can't do landscaping and grow construction and real estate and all of that. So what tools would you say that you were able to give Matt and team to hand it off to know they would be in good hands, and what did that feel like?
Well, I think when I was real young, my dad would come in and he would say, we got so much work. Everybody's working 65 hours a week until I say. And he would, come out screaming down at our shop. And then a month and a half in, he'd come down and he'd say, everybody 45 hours, no more than 45 hours. And we would all be like, well, you just told us a month ago we should work 65 hours, a week. And everybody was like, okay, we're gonna work that all summer. And everybody had a month, now you changed. And learning from like their mistakes or things that they didn't do, they never had a schedule. So like all the years that I worked for my mom and dad, they never had a schedule. So they had a stack of sold jobs, and he knew in his head, and my mom would say, like, this job needs to be done. We're going to do that job as fast as we can. This job needs to be done. And then calls came in as we're doing those jobs, and you did more. That creates chaos. It creates inconsistency in the company. You can't forecast. You can't look at what you're going to need materials-wise, manpower. So learning from that, I converted to just a simple spreadsheet that we managed like all the projects on, and we built a schedule. And then we were able to make it adaptable to be able to change it for rain days. And that really taught me a lot about the scheduling, the purchasing. And then we moved into different softwares and accounting, and I started learning, how to account for things. One time I walked into my mom, and she was working doing QuickBooks on her computer, and her QuickBooks was off by like $800,000, on the screen. And she's like, don't look at that screen, don't look at QuickBooks. I do it all on the side on a piece of paper. I do it all by paper. And I learned a lot by what they didn't do right. And at that point then I said, well, I'm gonna make a budget, and I'm gonna do scheduling, and I'm gonna start converting to like more of a methodical business, where it's process driven more than just mental. And I started working a lot on a budget, and my dad still tells this story. I was so frustrated one year because at the end of the year I was hoping for a bonus. I didn't get any bonus, and I was frustrated why. Why I didn't get a bonus? So I was fired up about it. So I spent probably like 2 weeks. I had my mom print out everything she had on QuickBooks. I took all of her receipts from the prior year. I took all the information I had, all of our payments for all of our equipment, everything, and I bundled it all to like a 36-inch paper that had our budget for a whole year. And that very next year, I said, I want to live by this budget, and I want to be able to grow the business by this budget. And at that very end of that year, I was off by $10,000. Wow. But it proved to the family that if you go by a budget and you understand the business, like then we could see where we were at. And the next year we got a little bit better, and then we passed it off to Matt. And Matt's probably more analytical on the landscape side than we were, and it's a lot more controlled environment now. But our families teach us a lot, and you learn from your parents, good things they did, or you learn from the bad things they did.
Last thing for you, Matt. What's coming up in landscaping? What are you working on? What's new?
So some new things. We've got a great team down there that wants to grow and expand. And one thing we ran with this year is trees. So Brendan really spearheaded that up. So in tree removals, tree trimming, we've got a guy who we hired who's been doing this work for 20 plus years. He's a climber. We went out and bought some new equipment for that. So that's one thing that we're really excited about, being able to offer that service, because we were getting a lot of calls in, and we're having to send them somewhere else. And it got to the point where we're like, why are we doing this? We could be doing this. It's right up our alley. We work with trees, just the smaller ones. Well, why not work with the bigger ones too? So that's one thing. Another thing we're currently in the works is swimming pools, fiberglass swimming pools we're looking at getting into. It goes right along with, currently, a lot of pool companies, they call us and, hey, we were doing this pool for someone. They want hardscaping around it. They want landscaping around it. So, then we come in after them and do this work. So it's something we're looking into, hoping to get into here. We just come into the project one step earlier. We'd install the pool as well and then do the hardscaping and landscaping around it. So those are some of the newest things. Also a little bit of just commercial work, a new commercial maintenance contract that we picked up and everything. So a lot of fun stuff coming up. A lot of things our team's looking forward to. Just continue to grow.
That commercial contract, that puts our footprint all over the state of Pennsylvania.
It does. It takes us from here to Erie.
So that's important.
Farthest out, way farther than we've ever been. So
yeah, which is pretty cool. All right, well, that is it for this episode. We will talk to you next month. Thanks for joining.